Hello Psychonauts. Today I'm going to add to my collection of strange experiences on LSD, and I'm going to talk about the times that I have sensed the future in one way or another, or at least thought I have, while on LSD. And I'm also going to talk about some of my theories about what is actually going on. So the first thing I'm going to mention is the experience of remembering the future. Now, what do I mean by remembering the future? Well, first of all, this is something that has happened to me a few times on LSD. I've had the sense of remembering the future, and I know the word remembering suggests that it's in the past, so you wouldn't have a memory of the future, but the way that I was experiencing it felt like a memory. It felt like I was like going over something that already existed or already happened. Maybe for like a brief moment I sort of felt like I glimpsed at myself at a old age or a later stage in life. And so typically this has happened to me on moderate to high dose experiences. I'd say the times that this has happened most distinctly has been on doses of around 300 to 400 micrograms, and it usually happens around the peak. It's at a point where there's usually enough change in time perception, and for me, I describe it as like you start to transcend time and you start to, step outside of time, and time starts to be, it still exists and it's this thing, but you're almost just outside of it. Instead of being like, intertwined with time, you're kind of beyond it for at least for a while. And it has to be a high enough dose where you're really having that feeling where your time perception is very much different from where it is in normal sober reality, but not too high of a dose where there's too much ego dissolution to the point where I wouldn't really be able to connect these impressions or whatever they are of future versions of myself, that I wouldn't be able to connect them with myself if there was enough ego dissolution at higher doses. So I think there's kind of a sweet spot of dose of which this experience has happened. And I entertain a lot of different ideas about what is really going on during psychedelic experiences. In this case, I want to think about why could LSD, how could you see the future? How could you remember something in the future? If we take just like our common sense view of the world, the future hasn't happened yet, so there's no way that we can sense it in any way. And especially, why would LSD do anything to help us see the future? I don't know. I want to talk about why I think, obviously, I could just be imagining. That's the easy explanation, isn't it? And it may be the correct explanation. I'm just imagining myself in the future, and under that LSD headspace, I'm just sort of feeling like it's a memory, and that is not correct. It's not a memory, it's an imagination, and that's the simple explanation, but that is not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about the what ifs, and I'm here to play with the ideas of maybe that is what's really going on, and how could that be the case if that is what's really going on. So I guess I should lay out some of my views of time. So I definitely think time, it's a dimension. I think it's just all there at once, in the same way that space is all there at once. And it's tricky with language because just the very saying of like at once like pre-implies that I'm talking about time. Anyway, I don't want to get too confusing in the wording, but if we think of time as like the fourth dimension and something that you can travel into, or you can travel in. And then, I mean, really we could extend that further, and the fifth dimension would be, you know, you could travel across different timelines. So, okay, so what do I think is happening? How could you possibly have a memory of the future? So, if you're thinking about a memory of the past, what you're doing is you're looking back at a specific timeline that has gotten you to the point that you're at now. Now, future memories, so-called memories, if they exist, or all these future events that happen to you, they exist on a variety of different timelines, and you know, they all converge back to the point that you're at right now. But there's different timelines. So even if you did have a memory of the future, I don't think there's necessarily a way to know if, I don't know, if we go with the idea that time is all there. I've had this impression so many times on psychedelics that it's just all happening, that the way we perceive time it has no real suggestion to the nature of time. It's just the way our brain perceives it. I mean, if there's anything I'm really sure about after psychedelics, it's that the nature of time is truly beyond what we typically think of it. And so if that is the case, if time is sort of like all happening at once, then I don't see any reason why not. You might be able to sense the future in some ways, and, you know, maybe sense future memories. I know that sounds very paradoxical, but yeah, I've had this experience on LSD. I've sensed the future, and I'm about to get into another experience of like seeing the future, but in like a short term, and it's like a visual effect. This would be when there's a person, maybe there's somebody you're with while you're tripping, and they're walking. So say they walk from point A to point B. This has happened a few times while I've been on LSD. You know, people are familiar with the effect of tracers, so, you know, you could see someone walking, or let's just use your hand, you know, you see your hand and then you see the imprints of your hand behind it, yeah. But I've had this experience where, you know, particularly with somebody walking, where I can like see their path ahead of them before they start walking there. And it's really weird because it's only happened a couple of times. Like I said, I mentioned the dosage with the last sort of sensing the future type experience. This has only really happened on like above 250. I don't think I've experienced this below that. But it's been really weird. I'd never know what to make of it. I just sort of like, I can see this path that they're going to take before they take it. And I mean, I think, you know, I'll start with the simple explanation again. You know, that your brain is just, I don't know, your brain's always just projecting reality. Your brain is showing you a simulation of reality. Your brain is taking in information, and it's just outputting this model, this world. And it really is a simulation in that sense. There's other meanings of the term we're living in a simulation, but that's at least one, that, you know, we're living in our own simulation created by our brains. So with respect to that, I think it's easy to say that your brain is still getting all the same information of a person moving from point A to point B, but it is just projecting that information differently to where I see, you know, a blurry outline of where a person's going to go before I actually see them go there. And, you know, I'm fine with that explanation. I think that it's very fascinating, even if that is the explanation. Like, that is incredibly fascinating, just to know that our brains, I don't know, the thing that we know though is that our brains can produce such drastically different versions of reality just purely dependent on our brain chemistry, which is really freaky to think about. I mean, even if nothing like, you know, even if nothing, I don't really know what word to say. I guess even if it is like the most simple explanation, even if it's the one that's the least exciting, that's the least mystical, the least the least magical explanation, the least out there one, it's still incredibly fascinating. So is that what I think is happening? Do I think it's just that my brain is taking in the same information that it normally would and it's just presenting it to me in a different way? I don't know. I think for this, I think maybe that's true. But then again, like I said, I really believe that time is not what we think. And for some reason, I don't know why this happens. I'm really interested in why this happens. Psychedelics make us perceive time in such drastically different ways. The whole thing is just wild to me that any of this happens, that any of these experiences are even possible. I mean, even if it is my brain just projecting reality incorrectly, then how do I know that my brain isn't always projecting reality incorrectly? I mean, which one is the baseline? Why do we just assume that sober perception is the most accurate? Obviously, I think I'm biased. I don't think sober perception is the most accurate perception of reality. I'm not necessarily thinking that psychedelic perception is either, but I think the real thing is that we don't know which perception of reality is more accurate. I mean, how could we know? We can just know them relative to each other. Yeah, so I'm really curious if anybody's had experiences with sensing the future in some way while on LSD or any other psychedelic. What do you think about the nature of time? Do you think that we get insight into the true nature of time while on psychedelics? Why would that be the case? I mean, it seems, what do psychedelics do that allows you to perceive time in this way? It's all incredibly fascinating, and I really do wonder if anybody's, I'm pretty sure people have, where you've seen someone's path before they take it, kind of like a forward tracer effect. Interested to hear any experiences like that. And I guess that wraps up this video. I have so many more ideas to talk about in relation to this subject, but I'll just start going off into too many different directions if I don't, keep myself. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that this video is over, and yeah, that's the end. I will see you all next time.